Hey guys, so a little bit later than usual. Apologies for that. I had a few difficulties with the house I'm currently in, so now that we've sorted those out, a little bit later than usual, but we'll get straight into the game. Obviously, fantastic result. Great comeback from 2-0 down, and a fantastic 3-2 victory, scoring right at the end, and brilliant performance from the whole team, especially Edinson Cavani, obviously making the difference himself. Now, look, fantastic performance, but one of the things that disappointed me the most in this game was at half-time. The number of people I've seen criticising Ole, criticising the team, criticising various things. You can see goals from set pieces, that's football. You can't have a football match or go through a football season and not concede goals from set pieces. Every team concedes from set pieces. It happens occasionally. That is not a tactical issue. It's not the fault of the manager. The manager can spend as long as they want drilling players on set pieces, but it's up to the players. If you're zonal marking, Harry Maguire, Matic, whoever's in that zone, you've got to go and win that ball. If you're doing a hybrid system of zonal and man-to-man, which we seem to be doing, Rashford, you've got to make sure your man doesn't get the ball. End of the day, that's not a tactical issue. The goals we conceded in that first half, yes, Fred probably shouldn't have given away a stupid free kick, but the goals we conceded are fluke goals that you could really realistically concede in any game. So for me, it was really disappointing to see people criticising the manager off the back of that. And obviously, I'm personally not the greatest fan of Ole, as you'll see. I think he's got a lot of big issues with the way he's managing the club, especially we're not seeing progression in important areas of the tactical style. But Ole was not at all to blame for the goals we conceded in the first half today. So with that said, let's get straight into the tactics. So obviously United started out with a diamond lineup, which was good to see, nice to see it after a while. And I think it worked really well. I think there were certain things that Ole had picked out, or the coaching team had picked out in the way Southampton go and play their game. And the diamond was actually a really good way of exploiting those issues with Southampton's, well, not issues, but variations, those little ways that Southampton try and beat you. So, first things first. So the diamond, the way it's set up, was really useful for this game because it was constantly forcing the Southampton players to make decisions about who to track. So the main issue that the Southampton players had came from the wingers there. So the winger on either side, they didn't know who to mark. Do they either go wide and press the United fullbacks, or do they come in and mark the United wide central midfield players? So what was happening was Bruno Fernandes was finding some nice pockets, sometimes Van de Beek. That was nice rotation there. And he was occupying the defensive midfielders of Southampton. And then the Southampton wingers there, in their 4-4-2 system, they were having to make a decision whether to mark Fred and Van de Beek, who were making nice runs, picking up good pockets themselves, and then that would leave Tellers and Wan-Bissaka free either side, or they could go on the fullbacks and leave Van de Beek or Fred free infield in more dangerous central areas. So what United did really well was not just the shape, but what was something we haven't seen so much in recent times, which is the fullbacks getting really high up the pitch and actually forcing their wingers to make that decision. Do they track the fullbacks and stop balls getting into the box for Rashford and Greenwood, or do they come inside and allow the fullbacks to have that ball out wide? And forcing those players to make that decision was key today for Manchester United, and was a main reason why I think actually, even though we went into half-time 2-0 down, I was actually impressed with how United started the game from a tactical point of view. I think what this allowed us to do as well, which is something we haven't seen enough of recently, was much better ball retention in attack. Now, Mason Greenwood wasn't great at it, his ball retention in general, and his all-round game. Let me know what you think down in the comments about Mason Greenwood, but for me, he struggles when he's starting in the front two, because his ball retention isn't really good enough yet, his all-round game isn't quite there, his link-up play, it's not quite the same level we see from Cavani, Martial, even Marcus Rashford. And for me, that's why he struggled today, and why Edinson Cavani was so much more impactful when he came on, because he was much better able to link up with the players around him and bring other players into play. But what we had was, because we were stretching the game, using the full width of the pitch with the fullbacks and having a lot of players in central areas, we made it easy for ourselves to retain the ball, sustain attacks and keep the pressure on Southampton. Something else I was really impressed with United doing today was our counter-press. When we lost the ball, particularly in wide areas, we were so good and so quick to get players over into those areas and stop Southampton playing out. And what was normally happening was that because their winger was being forced to track either Van de Beek or Tellers, they weren't necessarily in a good position to go on the counter-attack. So it was really difficult for Southampton to play out. And that aspect of the counter-press from United, stopping them being able to get those balls down the wings and causing us problems, was actually really impressive today. So I was very impressed with that from United. Obviously, the counter-press, what it does is not only puts the opposition under pressure, but it allows you to sustain your attacks and build momentum. And in both the first half and the second half, it was absolutely key to United's success in the game. Obviously, the wingers of Southampton being dragged out of position was a major problem. And when Southampton did manage to get those balls, normally vertical passes, through to the wingers, we did find against us that there was a lot of space for Southampton between the defensive unit and the midfield lines. So what was happening most of the time was that our midfield players, if Southampton are breaking away like this, what would normally happen is obviously one centre-back, whether it's Maguire, Lindelof or Matic, would get dragged wide that side, but Southampton would have players breaking into this space here between the United lines. And what we'd find was that obviously Matic is back, and he would sort of step up to try and confront the Southampton players, stop them getting the ball, and we would tighten up slowly. But the recovery runs of Fred and Van de Beek, because they were starting that much higher in the diamond versus how they would be in a double pivot, the recovery runs were giving the chance to Southampton to play that ball back in field and get the ball in dangerous areas and break at the United defence. Whether it's on the edge of our box, whether it's on the halfway line, that was a little bit of an issue for United, but overall, I think United dealt pretty well with it. So, in terms of the other sort of main threat Southampton had, the only really other difficulty they caused us was that diagonal pass. So when Southampton were a little bit closer to our box, so this sort of back three of United consisting of Lindelof, Maguire and Matic, normally Matic out on the left there. Matic would go out and confront the man, try and slow down the play. Tellers and Wan-Bissaka would be running back. You'd see this ball get played wide, Matic would get sucked in, and all it takes is one ball across and there's suddenly a lot of space for those Southampton players. Obviously Fred and Van de Beek recovering, Bruno Fernandes as well. And when he came on, it's got to be said, Edinson Cavani as well, terrific. He was really good at working back defensively, and it was so key today that there were so many times when Cavani was actually the man deepest of that midfield four. He was the one making those interceptions, bringing the ball out, helping us to bring the ball forwards. So it was nice to see that a forward is the one prepared to work hard, prepared to sacrifice things for the team, make ball recoveries and do his job. But what was happening here, the other issue for Southampton, as well as them having a lot of space, was this diagonal pass there. That was almost always on towards the winger because United's diamond midfield was often very narrow, getting sucked in towards the ball. So obviously, there's the positive. This is the trade-off Ole had to go for, the trade-off United had. We put pressure on the ball, make it really hard for them to play out of small areas, but if they do get the ball out of those areas, whether it's from back here, playing that ball vertically forwards, or whether it's out here, playing that ball horizontally across the pitch, when they get out of those small areas, those small traps that United set for them, United aren't able to get men around that ball quickly, and so we've got to just sort of contain it, and we are under a little bit of pressure there. So that was tactically where United had the biggest amount of issues, I would say. Now, obviously, Ward-Prowse and Romeo did a decent job marshalling the defence. The other thing to say with Southampton's midfield is when they were in their defensive shape and United were playing out from deep, it was quite interesting to note how, with the 4-4-2, obviously the main reason managers like it is because it's so simple. You've got a really good balance, pretty much everywhere on the pitch, you've got two players controlling areas, which makes it nice and easy, and it's a good distribution. You haven't got any real areas of weakness, and every single player in that system knows exactly what their defensive role is, which is, you've seen the 4-4-2 used defensively to great effect by the likes of Diego Simeone at Atletico Madrid. Obviously, Hasenhüttl's using it at Southampton. Defensively, even United use it sometimes, whether it's in the 4-2-3-1, Martial and Fernandes, whoever's playing in that number 10 role, they go and press together. United's defensive shape does go into a 4-4-2 at times because it is such a stable and balanced shape. But what we saw from Southampton today was that when they were in this 4-4-2 defensively, it was more of actually a 3 and a 1 on the opposite side. So what we had was, let's say the ball's on this side with Wan-Bissaka. You had the winger this side, and the two central midfield players coming across to try and shut United in, channel us into a narrow area of the pitch, and the far man on the opposite side was staying wide. Whether that was that decision that they were being forced to make, whether to track Van de Beek or Tellers, I don't know. But whatever it was proving fruitful for United, and I think it was one of the main reasons, as I said, that we went with the diamond. What it allowed was that when we got that ball across quickly, this man here was always in space. So in this case, it's Van de Beek. If it happened on the other side, we were playing out through Tellers on the left-hand side, Romeo and Ward-Prowse get dragged across a little bit, maybe not quite as much as that. But what it meant was that Fred or Bruno Fernandes or Rashford dropping off, there was always space in that area between that 3 and that 1 of Southampton. So what we did, it was clever tactically from Ole. By having this sort of decision to make for their winger, we gave ourselves space. And that's why the diamond was so smart. That's why we saw Cavani, for that first goal for Bruno Fernandes, he was able to drop into this sort of pocket of space back here. and play that ball across for Fernandes to tap in. And that, tactically, is something that I was really impressed with, because Solskjaer normally, he gets a lot of criticism. Tactically, he doesn't always make the right decisions, doesn't always make good calls. But it was fantastic to see that on this occasion, he's identified something with the way Southampton are playing in their deep block, and he set up a system and a team that exploit that weakness. So it was nice to see. Now, having a look at your guys' comments, so Declan Till, a lot of fans are wanting Fred, Van de Beek, Bruno in midfield. I think 75% of games is defensive suicide. Thoughts on that? Well, look, it is an interesting one. Fred, Bruno and Van de Beek, let us know what you think down below in the comments as well. Are you in favour of that, or would you like to see a different midfield? For me personally, look, I don't think it will work as a midfield. I think Van de Beek and Fred, look, they can play together in the pivot against a weak side. But what you do lose that stability of a figure like Nemanja Matic, who, by the way, may not get the credit he deserves, but he was absolutely brilliant. He won't get the credit he deserves because he's a defensive midfielder. He played a quiet performance, but he made a lot of ball recoveries. He was always on a sort of a calming presence. He was bringing the ball out, baiting the press, and then moving it on. Not taking too many touches, there's a difference. Rather than taking too many touches and losing the ball, he was baiting the press, holding off his man, and then moving the ball on, getting it out of that danger area, which is exactly what you need to do against a pressing team. I mean, you can either play quick vertical passes and don't give them the chance to get up to you, or you can draw them in and then move the ball, thus creating space for the players around you. And that's what Matic did well. And yes, when we had Fred, Van de Beek and Bruno, technically, on the ball, that's a pretty decent combination. Obviously, Fred's a little bit sloppy at times, but I think defensively, it does lack that anchor man, that figure that can be trusted to screen the defence, sit in position, and marshal the other players around him. So yes, I think Fred, Van de Beek, Bruno, it can work against some of the weaker teams. But honestly, I'm not sure it's worth it against some of the stronger teams, to be perfectly honest. So, it's an interesting one, Deck, but I don't think that, as you say, I think it may well be defensive suicide in a lot of games, especially against big teams. I think if we had to make one signing, is it going to be Dennis Zakaria? Is it going to be Declan Rice? We need a defensive midfielder who can do a job running around, they're mobile, they can shut out attacks, do what Fred does, go and bite into challenges, but a lot more successfully, and they can sit in that role, sit in, and play the ball. If Matic keeps up playing like he has, if we can go back to sort of anything like prime Nemanja Matic, we'll be a force in this team. And it's worth remembering as well, for all this sort of talk of United being in crisis, having a terrible start to the season. Yeah, it's not been brilliant. Yes, we've lost quite a few games. Our home record's been atrocious. But we win our game in hand. We're 2 points off the top of the table, guys. I think on Twitter particularly, people have lost sight of that, especially when they're criticising Ole at half-time today. People losing sight of how tight this season actually is. This season isn't going to be about who can play perfect football every week. It's not like that. It's not going to be like City's 100-point Centurion team. Who can get the consistency, who can avoid injuries, and they'll probably win the league. Whether it's United, whether it's Spurs, City, Liverpool, Chelsea, everyone's got a chance. All it takes is one good run of form, and the way things are going right now, I think United will be looking to get in that good run of form. Now, Todd Rodriguez says, low-key, Ole keeps on getting lucky. You know, look, I'm not Ole's biggest fan by any stretch of the imagination. I think there's a lot of problems, as I said, with the way he's setting up the team, the way he's coaching them, the way he's managing them. But today, he got his decisions right. His in-game management was very good. He brought on Cavani when he saw Greenwood wasn't having the impact he needed to have. Obviously, Greenwood's not all-round the best player right now. He's not at the top of his game. He's not perfected his game by any stretch of the imagination at all. But if there's one thing he's good at, it's scoring a low XG chance. He's a fantastic, fantastic finisher. And when he isn't scoring the 2 chances he was presented today, there's not that much point in having him on the pitch. Yes, he needed game time, but Ole identified that was a problem, brought on Edinson Cavani. Obviously, Cavani will get all the headlines because 2 goals and an assist, but what he did, his all-round play was superb. As I alluded to earlier, it's not just his play in the opposition box, but also the way that oftentimes defensively, he was our deepest midfielder. He was recovering the ball, he was helping to play out, he was doing the job of 3 players at times. He was fantastic today, Cavani. And so it's a testament to Ole's management today, that he got that decision right, and he picked the team and the system that would exploit Southampton's weaknesses. And he changed things quickly when they weren't going wrong. Quite often we've seen Ole wait till sort of the 70th, 75th minute, and we're all screaming at our TVs or whatever else, or at the players at the stadium or whatever. We're screaming, make a change, something's wrong, please. don't persist with this. We can tell we're not going to win the game. But today, just like he did in the Manchester derby, just before lockdown, he got it right. He made the right changes at the right times, and it made a massive, massive impact. So fair play to Ole. So Declan Till says, it's quite possible for Donny van de Beek to play in a pivot if we had, as you say, a proper defensive midfielder. Let Van de Beek be the progressor and we have a proper rock behind him. I think a Van de Beek-Matic pivot may work. Now look, yeah, I think Van de Beek is a fantastic football player. Obviously, having come through the Ajax Academy, he knows his stuff, he's comfortable anywhere on the pitch. And that's so important, and one of the things I admire most about the players that have had that Ajax education. He's able to progress the ball, he's able to play any role. But he's so much better, closer to the opposition's goal. He's better high up the pitch. So he needs to be, for me, he needs to be higher up. Yes, he can do a job in a pivot, but alongside Matic, I'm not sure the combined work rate is quite there, especially if Van de Beek is constantly trying to break beyond the defence, get forward. I'm not sure it's going to work. Now, Todd Rodriguez says, Greenwood is stagnating under Ole's coaching. Whew, that's a big call. Look, I don't want to be too harsh on Mason Greenwood. Obviously, his personal circumstances, he's had a really tough time of it lately. He's had, obviously made some poor decisions himself, which I'm not going to defend. The sort of stuff on England duty, that's up to him. That's a poor decision. He'll have to live with the consequences of that. But obviously he's lost a close friend recently. He's been having a tough time of it in the media. All these sort of reports of him not turning up to training and that, I think people are being a little bit harsh on Mason Greenwood. Maybe he looks like he's stagnating, maybe not. He needs a run of games in the team. I'm not sure he's going to get it with at centre forward with sort of the form of Martial, Cavani, having Marcus Rashford there as well. I'm not sure Greenwood's going to get as much game time as he needs, but there's a saying in football, the cream always rises to the top, and Greenwood's a very promising player. When he performs in training, when he starts to develop, and it will happen, he will hit a period where he gets better at linking up the play. He gets a lot better at sort of passing, his movement gets better, he gets better at retaining possession. He will get better at that. And when that happens, he will be starting week in, week out for United. So I wouldn't be too worried. I don't think he's stagnating. Growth for young players isn't a straight line. It's not like that. There are peaks, there are where it plateaus a bit, and then it grows again. We'll see all sorts of things from Mason Greenwood. Don't be worried about it at the moment. It's honestly not worth worrying about him stagnating. Declan says, so don't really know what Todd is talking about. Greenwood has been managed immaculately under Ole. He wouldn't have started today if Anthony Martial was fit. Would have got 20 minutes and might have scored with them tiring. You know, look, again, I think Ole said at the start of the game, I think, on why he chose Greenwood, he said that Mason Greenwood needs some game time. And fair play to him. If you want to make that call, go for it. I mean, every player in your squad needs game time. And as I said, this season's going to be about consistency, who avoids injuries. The more players we have with match sharpness that are able to come into that team and perform at a decent level, the better chance we've got of not just top four, but actually coming out somewhere near the top end and winning this Premier League title. So the more players we keep involved and getting them game time as much as possible, the better. So I think he may well have started today, regardless of Martial's fitness. I think it may have been Rashford that was in line for a rest, because I didn't think Rashford was very good today. Obviously, he got the assist for Cavani's second goal, but I thought Rashford had a poor game, and for me, he's the one out of our front players that looks like he needs a rest. In terms of Greenwood being managed immaculately under Ole, I think, look, as I said, just be patient with it, trust the process. It will take time. Growth for young players isn't just one big upward line. There will be times when it plateaus out. There will be times when he grows quickly. We've just got to be patient with it, trust the process, and trust. Because Mason Greenwood, he's so good on both feet, so clinical in front of goal. He could be, and I'll say it again, as I've said many times before, he could be our club's record goal scorer if he stays at United for his entire career. He could be one of the best players we've ever seen in a United shirt. So let's just trust the process. Let's hope Ole gets it right. And hope that Mason Greenwood keeps developing as he has done thus far. Now, I hope you've enjoyed the stream today. Obviously, tactically, as I said, very nice from Ole to use a different system specifically to exploit Southampton's weaknesses. Now, I hope he's taken on board why this system was successful, how it was able to sort of target Southampton's weaknesses, cause them to make decisions, and I hope he takes the lessons on board and takes them into our next game. So, without further ado, I guess see you guys on Wednesday. Hope you've enjoyed the stream today. We'll have a Scran Cam tomorrow night with Deck. So if you've got any questions you want to see, get them in for tomorrow night. Looking forward to it. Cannot wait. And until then, it'll be Wednesday night for the next tactical analysis. Hopefully a little bit sooner after the game. Hopefully our problems with the house fixed. And yeah, until then, take care. Great result today. Fantastic comeback. See you soon.